In your lecture you said that humankind is not mainly guided by a vision, but by an unorchestrated orchestrator. Don't you think it would be far more important, especially facing the times of today, that people would be guided by a vision?
Yeah, this is exactly where the meaning disappears, because we are sort of following something that was built to be sort of, philosophically speaking, meaningless. Mm-hmm. So the meaning is only in this sort of following something that has some guiding potential, but it doesn't. It mustn't be regulated. I mean, this is sort of the hardcore Tea Party, extreme right argument. So, of course, yes, the orchestrator must be in a servant position. Mm-hmm. And this is what happened, is sort of subject-object reversal economics, which should have served higher ends. Mm-hmm. That would be the part of the vision, has now become the giver of these ends.
Do you think that most of the people are aware of this fact?
No, I think, well, now a little bit, because, and this is also partially thanks to the economic crisis, where sort of this religious belief, we have reacted to the crisis is with a religious disappointment. How is this possible? What we believed wasn't really worth believing. So now economics, or the social debate, has become much more philosophical. I don't think we would be able to have these debates 10 years ago, or there were very few of them. So in this sort of a little bit depressed state of mind, one becomes more contemplative, asking the questions of meaning.
Would you say that from this point of view, it is even good that the financial crisis happened? From
this point of view, yes, of course, bearing in mind that it has very harsh consequences of a certain population, and that must be dealt with. But on a philosophical, on the level of the debate, it has been good, because we are reassessing what is it that actually guides us.
By what kind of vision are you guided?
Well, I'm looking, it's very difficult to get out of this box in which we have been milked, bred and fed. It's sort of even like a matrix, that it's there and you don't know where it came from. So some people call it the system, or whatever belief system you can say. So I'm trying to look beyond it exactly by studying different beliefs, be it Christianity or Judaism or Babylonian or Greek myths or poetry or even movies today. So you do see in every movie there is, of course, some agenda, and there's some more or less hidden message, and then I use this as a sort of a stepping out stone from the Catholic economic belief. So reading brilliant minds who are very critical towards what we very uncritically believe, or access what we believe without even knowing that we believe it. This to me is my way of trying to look at ourselves using mirrors from different cultures.
So would you say it needs kind of a thinking out of the box?
I mean, it needs to extend our fantasy. If we are trying to cure the economic with more and deeper of the same economic, then it could be helpful, but chances also are that the whole science is misguided.
So it's kind of a more integral vision.
Yeah, this was the idea of science. The whole idea of university is that it's universal, that everybody knows sort of. We today live in a society of Fachidioten, which is a nice German word. We all know little small of a fraction, even of economics, or even, I don't know how my body works. The moment I swallow this water, something is happening in my body, but I am completely ignorant of it. And the same thing, I put my money that I earn very hard, I put it in the bank, and the moment I put it in the bank, I don't know what this money is working on, I don't know what's happening. So it's also a society of oblivion, or of unknowing. And to sort of put it together, that was the original idea of Renaissance, that you study this and I study this, and then we join and we put these things together, which has proved to be quite difficult, because you come with different beliefs, we call those assumptions, and I come with different beliefs, and my human being as an economist will be a different human being to you as a philosopher or sociologist or theologian. So this, I think, program of science has failed in trying to be able to understand the human lot in its complexity.
Okay. In your lecture you mentioned that the meaning of life is connected to human desire. In this context, you talked about lower desires like greed, brutality, and so on. So, if human beings are guided by these desires, what do you think, from which place within a human being does the question of meaning arise?
This is difficult, but in a nutshell, I think it comes from the symbolic. Mm-hmm. So there is certain symbolism with which we attribute things. You know, if any bad signs, we always show it with this side of a hand. With all the greeting signs, we show with this side of a hand. So the symbolism there, just by turning my palm, is an insult or a greeting. That symbolism can lead to war, and that symbolism can make peace between others. And that symbolism is unscientific. That level of symbolism, or that sort of mythical belief, lives very peacefully in our heads, completely even detached or somehow attached, but unknowingly attached to the body of science, for example, or to other knowledges. So I'm trying to research the things that we don't know that we know. Mm-hmm. And these are the things, these symbols.
Would you say that the desire for peace exists within every human being, maybe at an unconscious level?
Well, in every human being there is desire for peace, and there's also desire for chaos. There's also desires of violence that we somehow, try to tame. But the one way how to answer this question is to look on the ideals, because the unsuccessful fulfillment of ideals is something that torments us. You could also say that we today live in much more than an ideal, even outside of a fantasy, of happiness of somebody who lived 100 years ago. I mean, if a person like that would live today and we would explain our problems to him or her, he would not even consider these as problems. So one of the so for example, big problem is the pension problem. But that problem is a shadow side of the fact that we live much longer than we used to live. And so it's usually not clash of anything else except for not being able to meet our very own ideals.
You said that the cause of the misery is that people want to have it better. Good is not enough, we want to have it better. There is a great statement in the ancient book called Tao Te King, I don't know if you know it, where it quotes, "The world is sacred, it doesn't need to be improved." Would you say that this kind of summarizes what you said, or what you mean with,
Well, in Jewish thinking, there is sort of a nice compromise, I think, between these two ideas. 6 days in a week, you should improve the world around you by your work and labor, etc. But one day, be actually rested. Not rested so that you can work better the next day. This is how we take rest today. It's become, again, a subset of working harder and better. But one day, don't change the reality. One day, be actually happy that you live in this century, in Germany, in Europe, on this half of the globe. So that, to me, is sort of a nice compromise, that there is certain things that we actually can be proud of, while there are actually also many things that we shouldn't be.
According to you, what is the meaning of life in general?
The meaning of life, this is so now, for example, I'm spending the last 3 years in the book of Job, where Job is asking God very good questions about the meaning of life. Really what Job wants is meaning. He doesn't want his pain to end, he just wants some higher principle, in that case God, to explain what is happening. Give me the meaning of pain. Give me the meaning of happiness. And the answer that God gives, but this is, by the way, the biggest monologue that God has in the whole New and Old Testament. It also, to my knowledge, is the longest monologue of any deity that we have from any culture. And God doesn't give an answer. So one way, this is how sort of Slavoj Žižek reads this book again. It says, do you want meaning? There is no meaning. Look at the stars, look at the animals. I don't want to talk about these things. I don't want to talk about morals, I don't want to talk about ethics. I want to talk about the beauty of creation. So even in the Bible, even when a righteous human being, the best we had, perhaps Job, asks God all the right questions about meaning of life, universe, and everything, God answers in 42s. He says, you know, sort of National Geographic answer. You know, have you seen the, you know, the forest? And interestingly, the question that God asks human being are questions that science is more ready to answer than theology. So, do you know how the stars were created? This is what God asks Job. Well, a theologian wouldn't give a good answer, but scientists have some idea. You know, Einstein has some idea. We have theories about this. Do you know the depths of the ocean? Well, scientists are researching the depths of the ocean. So, so in some respect, the scientific era is a continuation of trying to answer these questions, not the questions that people have of God, or used to have in the Old Testament times, but the questions that God had of human beings. We are now more ready to answer with science than we are with philosophy or theology, or morals.
In Jewish mysticism, we find the idea that every soul comes to the world with a certain mission. This mission goes far beyond the fulfillment of one's egoistic desires and has a lot to do with a social contribution. How do you consider the connection between one's own fulfillment and giving service to the whole?
The funny thing about, well, it depends how narrowly you define egoism. So, you know, if you only care for yourself, I don't think there is a human being like that. They usually care for at least their family or their friends or their colleagues or their co-workers. And suddenly this idea of very narrow-minded egoism becomes actually quite large. You can have a national egoism, which is called nationalism in one way, where you believe that one nation deserves better than the other. Well, that's sort of national egoism, but that includes millions or tens of millions of people. Nobody wants to be happy alone. We want to share this happiness.
So would you say that there is no pure egoistic desire because people always depend on each other?
Like, I don't think there is really pure altruism, or it's very rare. I would also say the same thing about egoism. I think most of our action is a combination that we can't even distinguish. Even if you try to distinguish your thinking into rational part and emotional part, this is also very impossible to do, because you will find that, if you think about it a little bit, most of the argumentations that you have in your head with yourself is a mixture of both.
If we keep the idea of a soul's mission, how would you describe your mission in the world?
Well, this has been, you know, of course, to explain the purpose in life is a difficult question. But I am playing around with, or trying to play around with, the most sacred and holy ideas that we have. I think being an economist is a good position to do that, because there's a lot of holy ideas or beliefs exactly in the body of economics, and trying to turn them around and see if there is meaning there. And you find that, you know, a lot of the times when you turn it around, it actually makes sense. It makes sense too. I enjoy looking for the paradoxes with the hope. This is a hope only, it's not a certainty, that it is exactly in these paradoxes, in these weaknesses of knowledge, where a step to better understanding is possible. What I try to do in life is to sort of go against reductionism in economics, and exactly to sort of pulling the pendulum into the other extreme of trying to say that no, everything is connected with everything, and if you want to understand, economics alone will not give you the answer. Like theology alone, like philosophy alone. I think a philosopher who's only a philosopher will not be a good philosopher, like an artist who is only an artist will not be a good artist. So also an economist who is only an economist, I don't think will be a very relevant one.
In conclusion, would you say that your mission has to do with integrating different parts, with extending point of views, and with kind of widening the horizon?
Yeah, I think that would qualify 62% of the meaning, yeah.
Okay. In many of your speeches, you emphasize that greed is the beginning of everything and causes a lot of problems. What do you mean by limit the needs for a happy life?
Rather than greed, I'd like to use the word discontent with the existing. You know, so it is discontent that is driving us. that's okay, but we shouldn't then be surprised that we're not content. So it's either one or the other. Either you're content and you relax and you don't try so hard, or you try in other areas, or you are discontent and you work and you improve and you try this and this and this and that. But then you shouldn't be surprised that you can't find peace or content. So this is a sort of a trade-off, if you will, between a satisfied life, which very often is ignorant of the pain or problems, or dissatisfied life, which is full of knowledge but also dissatisfaction.
Final question: what are 3 things of a meaningful day for you?
Oh, well, when I come up with a new idea that I'm able to formalize in writing, that to me is meaningful. When I have time to spend with my son and with my friends to enjoy a debate like this. But most I would really find is a day when I have a good idea, when I feel inspired by something that's new, when I'm reading a text and I'm able to come up with a way, a reading that I have not yet heard or forgot that I heard it, which according to one American theologian, Hasenblass, he once wrote that being original just means that you forgot where you read it.
Okay. Yeah, then, thank you.
Thank you also.